Okay, so I'm reading today in various articles and various different publications how the whole Leo the Leak saga is going to most likely run into the sand. Now, for those of you who are unaware, this saga unraveled for our Taoiseach, that's Vice Prime Minister, who was the Taoiseach until recently, but in a new deal with Fianna Fáil, the other main party, they did a deal to swap around. So he's now Taoiseach, which is like he's gone from being Prime Minister to the Vice Prime Minister, and he'll go back to being the Prime Minister again at the end of next year. So he got himself in a bit of hot water. And it seems this was a par for the course thing, but this one just blew up in his face. You see, Leo Varadkar is a very shrewd politician. He would have been seen back in the day when he was coming up through the ranks as a bit of a young Turk, a bit of a mover and shaker, energetic guy, bit of a kind of a right winger, saying all the right noises for the conservative people in his party, bit of a hooray Henry. He really was not the darling of the lefty, millennial, woke mainstream media, the chattering classes. They would have seen him as a bit of a right-wing, upper middle class, posh boy, hooray Henry type. Now, Leo, to his credit, spotting the way the winds were changing in Ireland and changing at a frightening speed, came out in the blink of an eye one day and announced he was gay. He just came out of the closet, just like that, and as if by magic, he became, in the flash of an eye, their hero, the darling, the very embodiment of everything they wanted in Irish politics. Here was going to be the first gay Taoiseach. Well, he's openly gay. So from then on, he was seen at every pride parade he could get to. He was constantly seen with rainbow flags and wrapped in rainbow flags and flying rainbow. He became the darling. He was taken to the heart of their bosom. And from then on, he was absolutely untouchable. They wouldn't call him out. They would give him a free pass, a free ride, pretty much everywhere. He could do, in the eyes of the mainstream media, no wrong. I mean, you know, he's gay, you know. And this was an absolute masterstroke. And of course, there was never any mention of this prior. And to my opinion, there shouldn't be any mention of it now. Like, who cares? Why is it any kind of an issue or any kind of an interest? Who he likes, who he sleeps with, who he marries. I don't care. I'm guessing you don't care. So stop talking about it. It shouldn't even be an issue. Anyway, that said, with this maneuver, Leo basically sealed the deal on his rise to the top. He knew that from that point on, he was pretty much untouchable in terms of the Irish mainstream media. You can't rag on him. You can't castigate him. You can't criticize him. You can't really get to him unless he literally went out and committed some vile atrocity on O'Connell Street in the middle of a busy day. Apart from that, he was golden. He was fine. So he went on to become Taoiseach. He went on to be the darling of the media classes, and he courted the media classes. And as part of this, it kind of became known that he would look after the people who mattered. He would look after various journalists that he knew he could rely on, various, the usual brown nosers and sycophants who he was giving them what they wanted, and they were in turn giving him what he wanted, which was a free ride. But all of this kind of went a bit off the rails when The Village, which is a publication here, one of the last, I suppose, actual journals in Irish discourse. There are a few more popping up, and you should check them all out, because the mainstream media is just one monoculture. It's one bubble. And there is a very unhealthy relationship between the mainstream Irish media and Irish politics. It is all too often, it's almost like a trope, that journalists from mainstream publications will become advisors and other various roles, PR consultants to politicians. It's just an unhealthy, incestuous relationship. There's far too much interchangeability between the so-called Fourth Estate, the media, who are supposed to be on our behalf, constantly on their backs, constantly prodding holes in what they say and what they do, and holding them to account. That's how it's supposed to work. So when there's all this interflow between mainstream journalists, or so-called journalists, and the political class, it's not good. They shouldn't be in bed together. They should not be in bed together. That's unhealthy in a democracy. Now, a publication like The Village is not in that bubble, is outside that bubble. And there are other publications that are completely outside that bubble, on the left and on the right. The Village, I would imagine, is more of a left-leaning type magazine. You have or publications like Gript.ie. You would have there would be conservative-leaning. You'd have the Burkean, again conservative-leaning. There's a lot of, you have the Journal.ie, which would again be left-leaning. So, but these are offshoots of the main monolith, and a society needs that, and we don't have enough of them. So let's break down how the Teflon Taoiseach, another one, Jesus, we've had them before, well, we have yet another one, our untouchable, Mr. Untouchable. Let's see how he came a cropper. So Leo had this mate, a GP, Matthew McTougal, guy who hails originally from an Irish-speaking part of the country, and who now runs a practice in South Dublin, a nice part of South Dublin, Ranelagh. So this young guy, have we got a picture of him here? Where is he? There he is there. So him and Leo. Another game, and not that that's of any issue here or there. And he's supposedly a pal. Well, he's fairly friendly there with Leo, so they were mates. Now, Matthew O'Toole, he became the top guy in a breakaway Doctors Union, the NAGP, the National Association of general practitioners, and they were a kind of a breakaway, an offshoot of the main doctors' union, which was the IMO, the Irish Medical Organisation. Now, there was a big deal being negotiated between the IMO, main doctors' union, and the department, the HSE, the Health Service Executive, which is our health department here, if you like. Big multi-million euro deal going forward. Now, the upstart union, this is Tuchel McFlukel's union here, they weren't included in the talks. They were kind of just left outside the room because they had kind of dirtied their babe a few years ago by not going along with a scheme that the HSE had come up with where there would be free healthcare for under sixes. Tuchel McFlukel and his lads, they decided they weren't going to go along with that. So the HSE kind of said, right, well, you know, two fingers to you. If you're not going to work with us, you just can go and sling your hook. So they were being left out of this new big negotiation, which obviously, you know, they didn't like. However, as the negotiations were going on, it seems that Tuchel McFlukel here seemed to know a lot about these negotiations. In-depth stuff. Things he shouldn't really know. And his buddies in the NAGP were asking, you seem particularly well clued in. Now, part of the reason that he had got the gig to lead this breakaway union, which incidentally went bust shortly after this, anyway, was that he styled himself as a man on the inside, a man who knew people, a man who could make things happen. So that, plus his, I suppose, youth and his energy, and they kind of probably wanted to style themselves as the young and hip and up-and-coming organisation, that's why he got the gig. So it turns out that he was telling people along the way that he was a good friend of the then Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar. Good mate, good pal, well in with him. He's my man, he looks after me. So let's just have a look at the Village article here. This is where it all kind of blew up. And this is the type of journalism that we in Ireland don't have enough of. We just don't have enough of it. Leo had a reputation for leaking all kinds of stuff all over the place. That's just not. That suited his friends and kept him on side with the certain journalists, but it's not really good for our society. You shouldn't be at that. So, right, okay, let's have a look at this. They say, since becoming Taoiseach, Varadkar has been accused of a number of leaks. After he appeared to publish Budget 2020 details before its official announcement, which he did do. The hashtag Leo the Leak trended. I believe he hates that. He's a big Twitter follower and I don't think he likes any bad stuff happening there, referring to him. Just as it had following Varadkar's criticisms of NFET on Clareburn Live in early October. The Taoiseach has also seemed to undermine Taoiseach Micheál Martin on other occasions. He's always standing behind him, sneering you. Just no. Anyway, announcing that Kildare was to stay in its August lockdown longer than expected before Martin had the chance to hold a press conference. So again, he was being the cool guy, getting in there first. The hashtag spoke to a belief until now unsubstantiated that Varadkar leaks information to friendly journalists in Irish media. That was the rumour. That was the talk around the campfire. With his leak to O'Toole, however, comes the first evidence of a potentially illegal leak from Varadkar. Okay, so, alright, they just go on to say that O'Toole was the president of this breakaway union. Now, so these negotiations are going on between the IMO and the HSE. They're top secret. They're in a closed room. They're as these things go, they're doing all this table beating and hashing out details and toing and froing. Outside the room is Tuchel McFlukel and his gang, but yet Tuchel seemed to know a lot about it. So then we have Leo Varadkar, while he was Taoiseach, tests a personal friend, the head of the NAGP, asking him his home address. Here we have the text. Leo Varadkar, mobile. And these were actually proven to be correct. They're not like screenshots and stuff. Varadkar later sent his friend a confidential and commercially sensitive document concerning an organisation in direct competition with his friend. So he was basically, they were doing a deal. These guys weren't in on the negotiations, but Leo was basically leaking all what was going on to him, which you can't do. That just breaks all kinds of rules and confidences and the law as well. Okay, so here we have a screenshot. Now this, I assume, is a WhatsApp, looks like WhatsApp. And this is, as you can see, the NAGP inner sanctum. So I assume these are the top people at the top of this union, which is led by Tuchel McFlukel here. And you can see here, it's a screenshot, a photo of he's sending what he received in the post from Leo Varadkar. It's terms of agreement between the Department of Health, the HSE, and the IMO. So they'd hashed out a deal. GP contractual reform and service development. So this is the upshot. This is the what they hashed out. And here we have a photo of it from Tuchel McFlukel, which had been sent to him by Leo Varadkar, who was then the Taoiseach, Prime Minister. It says here, Tuchel says, "I've got the contract. Copy available? Where did you get it?" And say, "But it's the real deal." And it was. So you see here, Machuo Tuchel boasts about receiving the contract, which Varadkar's government had negotiated with the IMO to fellow NAGP members in a group chat called NAGP Inner Sanctum. And here we have another screenshot of a WhatsApp message. Should we meet and review prior to same, says Tuchel. And that's somebody else replies, "Scan if you can and we can go through it. Different people will pick up on different things in it. Then we can agree a summary. We owe it to Machu that this remains very confidential. Must not leak," he says about the leak. Anyway. So, yeah. So basically, the whole thing unraveled because the village got under this. The village, one of the people in the loop blew the lid on the whole thing and had screenshots. As you can see, that's where they came from. And that put Leo in a bit of a bind because it wasn't just antisocial what he did. It was actually illegal what he did. It wasn't just that it was a "don't be at that" kind of thing. It's a bit off. This broke the law. It broke the Official Secrets Act, I think. It broke various different things. I mean, you know yourself, you can't just be leaking highly sensitive negotiation documents to your buddies who are in a competing organisation. I mean, that's like, you know, the old story of somebody you know in an organisation leaking you the quotes they're getting for a big job, and they give you what other people are quoting, and then you come in with that information and you get the gig. Can't do that. That's corruption. That's stroke politics. We in Ireland have an unfortunate and long history of stroke politics, corruption. Now, this, no matter which way you toss it up, is stroke politics. And it's like nothing has changed. And that's why a lot of people were quite rightly annoyed with this. Now, at the time, I saw it all breaking, and I immediately thought to myself, well, that's rather inconvenient for Leo. But I knew, and I pretty much vindicated now, and I think I will be fully vindicated soon, that essentially this was going to go nowhere. This was, the Gardaí got on the case, and there was talk of they were interviewing Leo, and they took his phone and they interviewed Simon Harris, who was then the Minister for Health, and there was all this argy-bargy. But really, it was never going to go anywhere. It was always going to run into the sand. Leo will not resign. There will be no long-term ramifications. This will just disappear. It will float off into the great beyond and just be a footnote in history. In Ireland, we have an unhappy habit of no accountability for politicians. They just, even when they do something as completely raw and wrong as this, and are found out, and verifiably found out to the point where Leo himself had to apologise in the Parliament. Does anything happen? No. Nothing ever happens. They just tough it out. You know, water off a duck's back. And this is unfortunate, because apart from anything else he may have leaked along the way, which never saw the light of day, or never got any airtime, or never really could be proven, this was proven. This was real. And laws were broken by a sitting Prime Minister. It just shows you the level of tone deafness, the lack of any morality there. I mean, there's no accountability. Leo knows he's untouchable. He knows he's safe. You know, he's just annoyed that he was caught. And this was the village that broke it, and not one of his pals, not one of the woke mainstream media, who I would pretty much lay any money on they wouldn't have touched this. They'd have just let it fly on by, float on by on the river. That's why we need people like the village. We need a functioning media in Ireland, and we don't really have it. We have a mutual backslapping, a mutual circle jerk operation. Politicians looking after journalists, hiring them to be advisors on big salaries. Journalists wanting to become advisors and get the big money, sucking up to politicians. That's unhealthy. That's wrong. But that's what we have. So good luck to the village, and well done for that. It was a good try. But if you're hoping to get a scalp from Ireland's first openly gay Taoiseach, that was never going to happen. There's no way. We're all stuck with Leo for quite a long time, I'd imagine. His party is stuck with him. We the people are stuck with him. He's positioned himself, as long as Ireland stays in this woke nirvana that it currently inhabits, then, if you are part of a certain section of society, part of the in crowds, if you're LGBT, if you're from any minority, you get a free pass. That's how it works. That's Ireland today. They haven't changed the game. They've just moved the pieces around. The people who used to be in the positions that were untouchable are just moved over there. And now the people who used to be constantly getting ragged on are now the people you can't touch. The game is exactly the same. The pieces are just on different squares. That's all. Anyway, no surprise from me. Nothing's going to happen here. it's going to run into the sand. And this time next year, we'll have all forgotten about it.